Hello and welcome to this COMP3218 game design and development video from the University of Southampton. Today we're going to be looking at some more of our students' coursework. My name is Tom Blount, I am one of the lecturers on the course, and I am joined here today by...
Johan Daniel Marinov, one of the demonstrators.
Fantastic. Johan, could you tell us a little bit about what we asked the students to do for this coursework?
Yeah, of course. So for this coursework, they had to make a game based off one of three fables we gave them. And the game itself had to have a story engine, which means that the story of the game affects the game world, and the game world affects the story.
Alright, brilliant. Let's jump into our first game. Okie dokie, and this is our first game, Murder on the Meridian Express. I like the title already. Nice sort of, like, quite a plain title screen, but very atmospheric. We've got some lovely rain sound in the background there. Let's hit start. So we've got our Northurlian passport. We are Stanley Lay Ton. I thought that hat looked quite familiar. And we are a private detective. Detective Ton. We would like you to investigate the mafia group known as the Cranes. So I feel like that's a hint to maybe which one of the fables that they've chosen. And their suspected activity on our train line. The police will be awaiting your arrival at the final stop at midnight. Make sure to keep an eye on the time, as you do not have enough time to talk to everyone. So that already feels like a good way of sort of maintaining some dramatic pacing. Use this journal to collect evidence. Good luck, the NTS trained company. So we can either return or continue. 3 hours later, it's 5 o'clock, and we are on a train, and my goodness, there has been a murder. He's dead, but that outfit, a member of the Cranes? There's no doubt this pitchfork was the murder weapon. I mean, how did a pitchfork get into a bathroom? So we have some evidence, we have a pitchfork. So we also have something we can interact with over here. There's something in the bin, a photo. So, little integrated tutorial as well, which is really nice. As the detective, you'll have to gather evidence and interrogate the passengers of the train to find the killer. When your detective's intuition picks something up in yellow text, you can open your journal and select some evidence to ask about it. Once you think you've got enough evidence, you can arrest whoever you think did it. But your detective sense is imperfect, so there isn't always suitable evidence, and you don't have time to ask everyone about everything. And of course, maybe there's more than meets the eye. What's that? A murder? How dreadful. I'm guessing you're some sort of detective. In that case, my name's Betty. I'm a farmer and I know absolutely everything about farm tools. I believe this is what they call a red herring. Let's ask Betty about the pitchfork. It's like, yes, that pitchfork is mine. Where did you find it? In somebody's chest, Betty. I pinky promise it wasn't me. Well, that seems fine.
Let's arrest her immediately. No questioning, just arrest. Pitchfork. Oh wow. Or how do you do
I
it?
have to be talking to somebody too? I do.
Oh wow, you can
Let's
actually...
However, you did not provide sufficient evidence to convict the accused. Additionally, oh that's right, we weren't supposed to be investigating the murder, we were supposed to be investigating the mafia.
Yeah, that's actually... But it did provide you with...
I think we can arrest whoever we like. I don't think we have to have evidence for it. We had somewhat circumstantial evidence that time. Right, let's try again.
Yeah.
So we'll ask her about the pitchfork anyway. Okay. So I think the time advanced there, right? It was 5 o'clock.
Yeah, so,
and it took us an hour
right
to
now
say, hey, is this pitchfork yours? So who we got here? We've got Caro the Frog Lady. You sure are green. Good job. Okay. We've got Connor the Chef. Can I get you something? Our food is the pride of the transnational rail. A murder in the train's bathroom? I hope they had not put off their food.
Okay, so 10 minutes per person, it looks like.
Okay, and then maybe extra if we're showing people evidence.
Yeah.
Show him. Why would I care about a pitchfork covered in blood?
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, here. Yes, I heard about the murder. News travels fast. Only ever left the luggage car to get some food.
Oh, okay.
And at the front we've got the conductor. Do conductors drive trains? I guess they do.
Especially the old ones where it's not automated, I suppose.
7 o'clock now.
Oh wow, okay.
So interestingly, we don't start at the back of the train car. We can actually keep going this way, which confused me the first time I saw this. But keeping an eye on those goons in the last car. A murder. I'm sorry. Who are you, mystery man? You have question marks instead of a name. So keep talking to us. I am persistent. I'm not a cop, I'm a detective. That's different.
Ah, interesting.
How about a trade? Being a merchant, I sell all sorts. Things that could be crucial in your investigation. Information isn't free. Okay. Here's the deal. I thought I caught a glimpse of an incredibly rare frog. Bring me the frog. Okay.
Oh, that's
Okay, so this is one of the... I realise I'm skipping through the text. So this is one of the cranes. They're keeping guard on the crane's cabin, but he's off to go and check on the body, I guess. So he's gone, but the door's still locked. Okay, so now I think we've spoken to everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know what we do next. So you're the frog lady. That's interesting.
It's not. Oh, okay. So
the frog begins to the frog lady, I imagine. His name is Frog, and he likes damp spaces. So now 2 people in the front. That's interesting. That dialogue feels like it was different because he said the frog's in high demand. So that's kind of nice that is reflected there. What would you call a damp space in the trade? Like the bathroom, maybe?
Oh yeah, that's
Is that a door or is that a door? Oh, that's a door. I haven't been near the bathroom all day. I've been here cooking and serving quality meals. Okay. Oh, there we go. There is a frog.
Oh yeah.
Frog's the frog.
So now we have a choice.
So do we give it to the owner or do we give it to the merchant who
might have stuff.
I'm going to give it to the frog lady. That seems very in demand. Nice. Frog lady is very excited.
Yeah. Wow.
It's interesting, like all of her dialogue is capitalized, which makes it really weird to read. I don't know why. Oh, interesting. We know the luggage guard was chatting to the chef. Something about taking a smoke break at past every 2 hours.
2 every 2 hours.
Okay, so the guy in here is going to take a smoke break or a sandwich break at 1/2. So I'm just going to advance time a little bit by chatting to this guy. There we go. So now it's 1/2. Is this? Nope. So it's not this.
Or is it? Ah, yeah. So it's the next hour.
So I have to.
I think.
It's a shame there's not a way to just. Maybe I should be doing something else rather than just wasting time. But this is my only lead at the minute. Let's try again. Aha, and he's gone.
Oh.
So I can check in the bags. There are guns in some of these bags. Oh, that's right. Yeah, again, not investigating the murder. So we have evidence of gun smuggling. There's something poking out of the other bag. It's a handkerchief stained with blood. The embroidered initials haven't come across the initials on this. The guard is about to come back. I'll stop looking around. Hello, guard. So... bloody handkerchief is embroidered with the initials CJ. Who do we know whose initials are CJ? It's not the frog lady. Connor? Connor's a C. I don't know what his last name is. I think somebody said his last name at some point. CJ's Diner, there we go. Wait, hang on, is he CJ? Maybe I should give up being part of the mob and just come and eat here at CJ, so... Okay, so this is... So the chef must be CJ.
Yes.
Let's see... So you can show him this. Is that a good idea? I cut myself and I had to wipe off the blood. That's definitely not the truth. Maybe I should bring this up again when he's under more pressure. When would he be under more pressure? It's almost midnight, which means the... what's the word? We're going to be pulling into the station in 30 minutes, so I can talk to 3 more people.
Wow.
Let's show you a bunch of guns. Okay. Let's show the luggage attendant the evidence. I don't know why that would help. Let's try and see. Okay, so we're fairly confident he's not in on it. I'm running around the train like crazy. I heard about the whole murder thing from the guys who came in here. Okie dokie. Yes, you have said too much. Got evidence. Conductor's testimony. Okie dokie.
Discovery.
Okay, so this is, I guess, one of the multiple endings. So we didn't solve the murder, but we did complete our investigation. Why won't they be requesting it again? We did what they asked. Aha! So this is what the stamps on our passport are. One for getting the wrong person, one for being uneventful. I mean, that seems fairly eventful. So that's a really nice touch. I like that. So, you know, showcasing that there are multiple different endings, but in a really, really nice way. So there's another, what was that, 3-4 more endings we need to go for?
Yeah.
So while I'm doing that, let's start going through the mark scheme.
Yeah. So let me get. Okay.
Oh, yeah, never used
So from what I see, the information design is quite good. Like there's quite a lot of information, and to me it looks like it's very nicely, you know, in a nice way.
Like the key bits of information are the evidence, when something is interactable, the time is obviously like a major factor. All of that's shown really, really clearly. Family photo is interesting. I don't know where. I don't know. We'll look at that we'll have a look at that in a second. In terms of the information design, though, I think we're easily at an excellent. All the key information is shown clearly. I don't know if it quite reaches prize-worthy. You know, it'd be nice if maybe, for example, I don't know, there was like a sort of a visual, like a little picture of the pitchfork or something like that, something to sort of show, like particularly the family photo. Because maybe that would give us a clue about whose kid it is. If, for example, they had bright red hair, maybe we know that we should be showing it to this guy or something like that. But otherwise, I think we're firmly at an excellent there.
Yeah, I think I agree, and the graphics wise as well, I think they are really like they really fit the game and everything.
Yep, the graphics are really, really nice. The style's really, really consistent. Even like the little sort of like parallax in the background is really nice as well. The characters are all pretty distinct. I guess that comes under the information design partly as well. But like, you know, this one's in blue with a big hat. This one has a bright red beard. This one's all wearing green. Like they're all really just. It's a bit like Cluedo, right? We've got like lots of different sort of ways of differentiating between the different people.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I should try giving the frog to that guy.
Yes, so in this case, an excellent for graphics would be consistent, effective, and appealing graphics.
Yeah,
And
I think
we're
we're
there.
easily there. Would you say we're up at praiseworthy, which would mean, you know, the graphics are thematically resonant?
That's a good question. What would it mean for them to be thematically resonant? Because it feels like for such a game with a murder mystery and all that, it does feel, to me at least, a bit thematically resonant, although I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, it was partly, like I said as well, like sort of giving each of the characters, like making them all like really distinct, so they're all sort of like, it's easy to identify the suspects and tell them apart. Like the luggage attendant and the other attendant in the other one look a bit too similar maybe, but otherwise they're all very very nicely done. So maybe between an excellent and a praiseworthy there.
Yeah, I think that's... And what about the audio? I can't hear anything, so you have to tell me.
Yeah, sorry. Again, I'm getting distracted by reading all of this narrative. So audio-wise, we've got a lot of lovely sort of like background music, sort of ambient audio, like the the rumble of a train, like the squeal of rails and that kind of thing. We've got some really nice feedback in terms of when this question mark appears, we get a little sort of what do you call it? A little squawk. I don't know if that's the right word. There's not a lot of other... oh no, there is. I was going to say there's not a lot of other effects. There is one really important one, which is the clock chimes on the hour, which is super useful.
Oh,
because
wow.
that's really important to what we're doing.
Okay, that sounds, yeah.
So a good would be complementary audio effects and music. Excellent would be complementary and appealing audio effects. And I think so it's not technically music, it's sort of like background ambient music, and I think it's covering the same purpose there, so I'm not worried about the fact that it's not strictly what you would call music. I think it fulfills the same role, and I think in terms of sort of the overall theming of it, I think it's really, really good. Yeah.
So
I would say, in fact, I would go beyond saying it's good. I would say it is excellent.
yeah, appealing, complementary, appealing effects and music, and yeah, you said about the music. Okay.
Yeah, I think to get praiseworthy, they might have to do a little bit more with some of the effects. Like a lot of these games that have these kind of dialogue things have a sort of like as people are talking,
exactly.
or something like that. Or you could even do a sort of like what's the word, like Simlish, like where each sort of character sort of speaks kind of nonsense. But again, just like how they're visually distinct, you could do something kind of cool to make it so that they all have a different accent or voice, even if they're speaking nonsense.
Or for example, I don't know if it's like that in the game currently, but when you find out an important clue or you find evidence, like a sound effect for that, that makes you, oh, I found something important.
Oh yeah, the sort of like noise of inspiration or something.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know if it's there, but because currently they kind of show it visually with different color of the text and stuff like that. So something like an audio cue, a different audio cue might be also very it would put it at the praiseworthy.
Yeah. So I think it's probably excellent. Sorry, again, I'm getting distracted by searching for a frog. There we Cool. So that takes us on to meaningful play. So what is this game like to play? So in terms of mechanics, so we have picking up items, we have using those items in particular circumstances, we've got moving through the carriage, we've got the time that ticks forwards at particular intervals, we've got characters that move around at particular times. It's a shame that it's only the one guy that moves, but I guess that kind of makes sense. It's a train. There's not many places that you have to be at certain times on a train. So yeah, overall, like, it's not an enormous set, but it is sort of like a very sort of consistent set. So what have we got? A good would be a set of complementary mechanics. Excellent would be a wide set. Would you say there is a wide set?
I mean, so let's think about this. If we don't think it's a wide set, then what would we add for it to become a wide set?
Yeah, so I mean, the typical thing that you would add to, like, sort of adventure puzzle game is combining some of these items in very ludicrous ways to solve a puzzle. Like,
yes, yeah.
Like, that's not necessarily like a mandatory feature of these. It's just the first one that springs to mind. And of course, one of the things is, you don't have to constantly add mechanics. What you can do is sort of combine them in interesting ways. So, or make greater use of the ones you've got. So, if the game sort of lasted over a longer amount of time, you could do more with that sort of particular time. So people being in different cars, that unlocking different things that you could investigate and things like that. But again, small prototype, right? They are kind of using keeping the scope nice and small so that they can get it nicely polished from the looks of it. So I would say maybe between a good and an excellent for that.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Control-wise, again, because there's not a huge amount of... I didn't actually read what he said there. What was I talking about? 3 of those... Let's focus on the mark scheme and then I'll read the evidence.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, there's not a massive amount of mechanics, and therefore there's not a massive amount of controls. We've mostly got move around and click on stuff, but the controls are all very smooth. They work very well. The fact that I can use tab to bring this up and down sort of is kind of nice as well. Particularly that I can do it, mid conversation to sort of do my sort of Phoenix Wright moment of aha, objection kind of thing as somebody speaking is really nice. And the fact that we can consult it, again, ties into the information design partly, but the fact that we can sort of consult the evidence as we're going and sort of bring it up as somebody else is saying something works really well.
Yeah. So,
So I would say I get like a good would be a reasonable set of smooth, usable controls. Excellent would be that they're also intuitive. It's tricky because there is, like I say, a bit of a limited set of controls.
Much.
I think it is everything that it needs to be, but it's not
exactly.
But it's not sort of like particularly novel, and that's fine. So I would say, do you think an excellent or between a good and an excellent?
I was thinking between. I mean, yeah, maybe between. Although, you're the one who's controlling and saying it feels smooth and all that. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so let's put that between a good and an excellent, because the controls that are there are really nice. It would maybe be, again, sort of interesting if you could do some stuff like combining them, or like, I don't know, something like dragging the evidence in front of somebody's face or something like that. I don't know. In terms of bugs, I would say this is a reasonably complex game, and I certainly haven't seen any bugs, so that very quickly and easily puts them at the excellent.
Yeah.
If we notice any, we'll come back to that, but otherwise that's a very easy one to tick off the list. Which brings us to, how well did this game fulfill the brief? How well did they do what we asked them to do? So the first thing on that list is the story engine itself.
Yeah, that's the part where the game world affects the story, and the story the game world.
Okay. So first one, game world to story. The things that we do in the game affect the story. Yeah, so like we can affect the progression of time, and that will affect like where the NPCs are. How often we talk to them will affect what they say. What people we talk to will affect the way the things that they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if we talk to people repeatedly, their dialogue will change. So it sort of goes back to like, you know, the slightly limited set of mechanics. There aren't like a huge amount of things to do, but obviously like showing somebody a particular bit of evidence and it changing not only their dialogue but the ultimate outcome of the story is a pretty clear and important example, I would say, of game world to story. So that would immediately put them at good. Excellent would be consistent interplay between the game world and story with important aspects. Would you say it's there?
It feels like that because you constantly give evidence that you got from playing the game and then it changes the story. So it does feel like there's an interplay between the game world and the story.
Oh, that's interesting. I got different dialogue from this guy, and I don't remember how. But yeah, okay, so I guess before we settle on something for that, in their game notes, did they talk about sort of how their story engine works?
Yeah, so they have a question, how does the game world impact the narrative? And they say, at a basic level, presenting different evidence to the various characters triggers different story flags and responses which determine the direction of the story. What else? So these mechanics of interaction with the characters are presented entirely as a diegetic feature. And by performing the interactions like this, we attempted to improve the cohesion of the mechanics and the narrative, which I think they've done a good job. Yeah, so
was that game world to story, sorry?
Yes, so how does the game world impact the narrative? And they do say that from a narratological perspective, the driving motive behind the game is the process of piecing together the fabula, or how the murder happened, and what is the mafia doing there. Oh, you solved it.
Yes, but was it the right thing to do? We'll never find out. Well, we will if I play it again, and this time.
Yeah.
So game world to story, I think, is pretty excellent. Story to game world.
Story to game world.
Actually, I guess that's what I was saying before, right? As you sort of change and do things, it's a bit tricky because the gameplay is very interconnected with the story, right?
Exactly.
All of it is done through, you know, dialogue and sort of. That's kind of like managing agency. So we'll come back to that. But the fact that they don't let you out of the bathroom until you've looked at the body is a very sensible thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's the thing I'm also a bit not confused, but like it's hard because the game itself really interweaves the narrative and the game.
Yeah, like
for
example,
picking them apart.
So what do they say in their game notes about it, for example?
Yeah, so for how does the narrative impact the game world? So they say that while progressing through the narrative of our game, several key elements or key events impact and update the state of position of certain game objects. This means that the choices and order of conversations that the player decides to take impact the game sim corresponding to the narrative impact of the choices. So for example, the frog will only appear once the player has understood its narrative importance. Another instance of this is the cargo guard who takes regular smoking breaks, which can be discovered by talking to the frog lady.
That doesn't change. It doesn't change the game world. It just reveals it to you. He'll still take those breaks even if you haven't spoken to them about it. So I don't think that's the story affecting it. It's the story revealing it. But yeah, I can see what they're saying. Certainly in terms of like the frog only appears after you've made certain like story choices.
Yeah, so they do say that it kind of acts like a sort of complexity curve. So they avoid overwhelming the player at the start with too much to do.
Okay, so I would say, yeah, it's tricky. So I think for this one, I'm sort of erring around like the satisfactory side of things. Like there are definitely some examples of the story impacting the game world, but I think that it's a bit more limited than the other way around.
Yeah, it does. And that's the thing. There's always, it's really hard to make both of them work together. Both the game world to story and story to game world.
Yeah, particularly when your game world is primarily the story.
Yeah.
Okay, so next is agency and choices and how we make decisions and the overall sort of richness of the structure of the story. So, along with their game notes, have they handed in a
narrative, table diagram with a lot of branches and stuff, or at least it looks like that.
So it certainly looks like there's multiple endings. I say looks like. We've seen at least 3 of them, so that's good.
So there's a total 17 permutations of the 5 main endings.
Okay.
So 5 endings with small permutations, I suppose, depending on what you've done and discovered.
Yeah, so we can. So I'm trying to think sort of what precise sort of like moments of choice there are, because a lot of them are not necessarily super obvious. Like, I mean, the most obvious one is which person do you give the frog to, right? And then following that, who do you like arrest at the end, if any? So blah, blah, blah. On the mark scheme, a good would be several branching points. Excellent would be a number of branching points, and praiseworthy would be a network of branches and paths through the story. And here's the thing: I don't think necessarily like the moments of choice are obvious, because a lot of it is which order you talk to people in. There isn't enough time to do all of it. How do you sort of decide which piece of evidence you're going to show to which person and when? I think all of that interconnectedness actually kind of puts that up at the praiseworthy.
Yeah, you network of branches and paths through the story. Yeah, you could argue it's because I'm looking at the diagram they've given, and there's quite a few things. Yeah, I think you're right. It does feel like it really. There's a lot of different subtle paths that kind of interweave, and network of branches. And they say that they use a split join structure with various choices leading to final climax of accusing the murderer. Okay. So do we put them at the praiseworthy for that?
In terms of the quality of choices, interesting choices and an effective system for managing player agency that uses. I would say. I would say it's between excellent and praiseworthy. I think most of the choices are like interesting. Some of them could use a bit more sort of not necessarily explanation, but a bit more sort of framing in terms of like the frog lady character and things like that. Sort of like setting up like why. Yeah, just a couple of elements like that. But I think still, yeah, definitely between excellent and praiseworthy.
Yeah, almost there. But yeah, pretty good actually. So should we go to the poetics or the fable and how the fable fits?
So okay, given that everyone is the bad guys are called the Cranes, I'm assuming this is the farmer and the cranes, the moral of which is if words do not suffice, then blows will surely follow.
Yes, I think so, although they don't mention it at the start, maybe somewhere. Yeah, they do mention it. And in that sense, they do say that the fact that you have to back up your words with evidence.
Okay.
You cannot, just say, "Oh, he did it," and "Oh, I don't have any evidence." They say that fits the fable. And what else?
Yeah, so I was going to say, in terms of, like, it feels like there is a bit of so I did speak to them about some of the endings which we haven't seen, which is the idea that maybe the chef's justified in what is done because of like some of the events we haven't seen yet. But so in terms of that, like the premise is kind of there, although I was going to say the gameplay doesn't really have that same kind of what was I saying? I'm trying to solve crime and Mark at the same time. Yes, the fact that you can't just use words, you have to back it up with evidence. I can see you could definitely make an argument that that's trying to sort of maintain that same kind of poetics. So if we look at a good, that would be a narrative and gameplay complement one another. The key mechanics are in keeping with the themes of the story. I'm not sure the mechanics really emphasize that theme like enormously, but I think it definitely. You can make the argument that it does support it.
Yeah. Keeping. Yeah.
Okie doke. So now we move on to techniques, which is all about the pacing and how they actually tell the story. Interestingly, so you've got the timer, which is sort of like an inherent way of trying to sort of maintain pacing and raise the stakes and things like that. Because the game is like relatively concise or condensed or compact, there isn't a huge amount of room for it to sort of like escalate dramatically. Which again, they've chosen like a relatively small scope to put the most amount of polish into it, I'm guessing. So other than the clock ticking, there isn't a huge amount of pace. Like otherwise, it is relatively flat, right? The gameplay follows like all the same structure. It's talk to a person and maybe show them something. There's nothing beyond that. There's not like a big climactic boss fight or the moment in Poirot where he's like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you know why I've gathered you all here today. It is because somebody here is a murderer, and you dramatically point to the final person. It just kind of ends, which is like a little bit of a shame. So a good would be some ascendant. A satisfactory would be some ascendant pacing. Good would be ascendant pacing with a clear final peak. And there's a clear finale mostly where you if you click the arrest button, like that's it, right? That's your climax.
Yeah.
But it's not like the dramatic high point. If anything, like the peak of the drama is immediately when you start and oh my god, there's a body.
Yeah,
it is kind of missing that resolution of the typical murder mystery, where it's a case of like, now I've gathered all the evidence, let me show you how it all links together, rather than sort of like using it piecemeal to sort of progress the story. And again, I can see why they've done that for gameplay, but it kind of is missing that aha revelation moment. So I think between a satisfactory and a good, though, because it does have that.
It does have a final or an ending, but not quite there, because like.
Okie doke. In terms of techniques,
I'm reading what Luigi the Crane is saying. Oh, that looks interesting.
So yeah, the person that was murdered was his brother, and the Cranes are going to try and cover it up. So he's going to help us this time. There we go. So I can.
Whoa.
Hello.
That's a lot of.
You never saw that guy actually. See, you can tell like they've done a good job with the story, because I'm getting invested in like what is the mystery then.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose the next part of the mark scheme is the techniques that they use, the game writing techniques. And let me see. So
we've got the sort of dialogue. That's where most of the story is coming from, right? There's a small amount of like environmental storytelling, I guess, in sort of like the clues that are found.
Yeah.
There's like the letter at the end.
Like
the sort of like epilogue.
Yeah.
Does that constitute a separate technique?
And was there a technique about starting?
Oh, I guess, yeah, starting like in medias res, right? We start in the middle of the action. So yeah, okay, I guess you could say that as well. Okay, so a good would be use of more than one game writing technique. Excellent would be appropriate and consistent use of more than one game writing technique. I think like the dialogue and the different conversations and all the different interactions with NPCs, I think, are like the strong point of the way they're conveying the narrative, closely followed by sort of the evidence that's appearing in our journal to help convey the story. I don't know if it's all the way excellent, but maybe between a good and an excellent there.
Yeah, I agree. And I suppose that leads us to the feedback.
Okie doke.
So let me see what they've said.
Yeah, so as they were developing the games, they got some feedback from us in the lab sessions, and we want to see how they've interpreted that and reacted to it.
Yeah, so okay, the first piece of feedback was accusing a character should not be the only branching point, and these choices should lock out endings. And what they've done is we introduced various other major choices the player can make, which determine the ending of the game. For example, who to give the frog to, whether to trust the brother, whether to investigate the murder beyond the confession, etc. And sub-endings reflect smaller, but still significant, choices within the game, augmenting the main endings and making them feel more responsive to player agency. Yeah, I think they've been successful with that piece of feedback. They've implemented a number of endings and sub-endings with depending on what you did, so that's quite
Yeah, I think the fact that there are sort of different paths and branches through the story. In fact, we obviously said when we were talking about the structure, like that, turning it from a sort of you go all the way through and then there's a choice at the end, to that sort of interconnected network.
Yeah.
Definitely was a really good change.
And the next piece, the final piece of advice,
Oh, there we
feedback.
go. There's the fable.
Oh, oh yeah. So there must be. And you have only 10 minutes, or?
Yeah, it looks that way. So I don't know if I'll be able to get the
Ah.
perfect ending.
So yeah, let me look at the final piece of feedback. This should be choices rather than calculations, which is, yeah, that's an important bit. So it says that the result of choosing a particular part is not clear beforehand, and it's up to the detective to determine the best course of action. Yeah, that's good. And there's no quantitative measure of each decision. The player must choose based on what they know and what they think the next course of action is, the best course of action is.
Interesting. Yeah. So overall, I think they have made it like a number of decent changes there.
Yeah, so they've definitely interpreted. Yeah, I think they've interpreted the feedback and addressed it.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily like what's
Yeah,
the, like
to
not like an incredibly sort of what am I trying to say? Like not an especially novel or imaginative like change to what they're done, but like a very very sensible one,
it's
and I think
still
it puts it clearly at the excellent marker.
yeah,
Okay.
and I think that's all for this game.
Yeah, and I tell you what, we'll leave the last ending for you two all to try. Okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, and this is Orpheus. Subtitle: Wants his wife back. Again, nice title screen, very sort of thematic. I like that there is a super secret dev menu. That would be quite handy, so we can see all the branches. Let's begin. Press the Enter key to press text. Okay. Once was a man named Orpheus. Is this the start of a limerick? No. Son of Apollo, Orpheus was a master on the lyre. Through his music, he charmed Eurydice, and they married. It was a happy marriage full of love. One day, Eurydice went out dancing with nymphs, and unfortunately, as she was dancing, dun dun dun, she was bitten by a venomous snake and instantly died. Orpheus was stricken with grief. The songs of sorrow he played were heard by all. Orpheus then decided to descend into the underworld to convince Hades, the god of the dead, to save Eurydice. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. He played a beautiful song to try and convince Hades. That's cool and all, but I'm more of a jazz fan. But I played my heart out. You're meant to be moved by grief. Nah. That's how it goes. I read it on the ancient Greece Wikipedia. I don't decide who dies. I'm not powerful enough to bring your wife back. However, I'll strike a deal. Bring me 2 souls of gods, and then I can bring back your wife. Okay, so like an interesting sort of setting of the scene there, kind of like a somewhat sort of low-tech cutscene, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
There are 3 possible gods we can kill. The god of wind, the founder of Prometheus wasn't a god, he was a titan. Ares, the master of war. This feels like a terrible idea.
Oh, which one?
I just like killing a god doesn't seem like it's a great idea. So this is Ares grassland. So Ares, if we're going to kill a god, let's kill the god of war. That seems.
Oh.
Okie doke. I think we're taking a bunch of damage, but I don't know what the controls are.
What are you?
There we go, we can jump.
Oh
god, giant mushroom. Jump again. Okay. Maybe a little bit of a bug there.
Does it show health? Or...
I don't know. I don't know if we have health. Like I'm flashing as they hit me, but I don't.
That's
Okie doke. So I can click to swing, but they don't seem to be flashing at all. I think it makes a noise when I hit it though. Or it was a second ago. Okay.
Maybe you're too high up.
Yeah, I don't know how to attack lower though.
Yeah.
Okay. Like an interesting variety of enemies. We've got the flying ones, we've got the skeletons, we've got mushroom people. Oh god. A little bit tricky to control. Like we are floating and sliding around quite quickly. Okie doke. A little bit of platforming section.
I see.
It's a little bit tricky to line that up.
Is there any sound?
Yeah, we've got some
music?
fairly dramatic background music, and like I said, the enemy was definitely making a. I can't jump now, unfortunately. Oh god! So I've got it all the way back to the bottom. Let's try again. And yeah, the monsters seem to make some noises as well, but it's yeah.
I see.
Okay, I've made it to a house. Or a okay.
Oh, that's probably.
Is that Ares? Do you think? Okay, so Ares at least is flashing when I attack them, so I assume that means I'm damaging them. But you're right, we don't seem to have a health bar. They don't seem to. Oh, we got them. Okie doke. Woof.
Or
okay.
Maybe.
Oh, we're supposed to go up. Maybe that wasn't Ares. Maybe that was just some guy.
Maybe there's an exit somewhere.
Okie dokie. Doesn't
Try the top right corner.
Yeah, it looked like there was something there. No, I think that's just the corner. Okay. So I'm not sure how we get out of this bit.
Escape? Or
does if I exit, will we go back to the... Oh, okay, we actually just have to quit out and...
That's a bit unintuitive.
Yeah.
But
okay, we figured it out at least.
Yeah.
So, who do we want to kill? Do we want to kill the god of wind or the person that gave humanity fire? Who, if I remember rightly, is strapped to a rock and being forever eaten by an eagle. So it feels like he's probably the easiest one to kill. But I'd feel worse about it.
Oh.
Ooh, interesting. So let's see what happens if we speak to Hades when we've only got one soul. You returned. You've retrieved the two. No, I haven't.
Oh.
Searching for a hero to serve me for such a long time. No one wants to serve. Love can be easily manipulated. All it took was killing her. Now your service has ended. Now I've got lots of power, but you're going to kill me. Blah, 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 blah. I promised I'd save your wife, and I will. Unfortunately, the system works on balance. A soul for a soul. I gave you 2 souls of gods, though, so surely that's... Well, I gave you 1. As Hades rose from his throne, Orpheus was stuck in place, overwhelmed by the power of the god's souls flowing from the king of the dead. Hades raised his arm as an ethereal spear manifested in his hands.
Oh wow!
The spear pierced Orpheus. I like that they've got sort of like actual paintings of and like Greek artwork to sort of help tell their story. That's kind of nice. Ending 1 of 2. Your soul was taken. Okie doke. So it feels like that's if men had all they wish, they'd often be ruined. So that's the theme that we're going for.
Yeah.
And I guess on that note,
we can start.
I can just play ending 2 cutscenes straight away. Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. I'll see if I can
just go to Hades immediately.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So we'll skip through all of this, but
yeah. And in the meantime, let's start marking.
First off, overall quality. So, information design. What information have we got? Oh, interesting. Apparently, we've already got this soul.
Yeah,
So I
maybe.
don't know if it's not resetting properly.
Maybe.
I tell you what, I'm gonna quit out of that, and I'm actually gonna reload it just from scratch, just to see if we can go straight to Hades and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, overall quality, information design. So we've got the
Not
there's
a
a little bit,
lot.
yeah, there's a little bit of feedback that we get when we're taking. I assume we're taking damage, but we don't have a health meter, so it's difficult to tell, and we don't seem to
Die or
die.
something. Yeah. I mean, you do die in the end.
It's
Killed
really
by Hades.
it's really not clear what we're supposed to do when we've defeated one of the gods. Like it took us a little while to figure out that we have to effectively quit out through a menu rather than just the game progressing. Okay, there we go. So where would that fall? So a pass would be there is some attempt at information design. Okay, interesting. So he will.
React to that.
Okay, so he will react if we've not got any souls, but apparently Ares counts as 2, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, so some attempt at information design would be a pass.
But for the goal is not super clear. Like,
oh,
I don't know where we should be going. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, so in that case,
stuck as well. Oh no, there we go. So I had to go into the pause menu to unstick myself there.
So in that case, the way you've talked about it, it seems like the information design is not sufficient with what you, as a player, need to know.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that might be the case. There's not a lot that we're being told. Yeah, like it's like even things like whether we're hitting or damaging the enemies isn't clear. Like sometimes they'll flash, sometimes they won't. Like where we're actually meant to be attempting to get to within the levels a bit. Like we're told like what the overall objective is. Okay,
yeah,
the bottomless pit. So there's definitely an attempt, but I think overall, yeah, it's probably unfortunately down at the poor level.
Yeah, graphics-wise, though, I think they look pretty good. Like
yeah, graphics.
It feels like
it's an interesting sort of set of like assets that they're using. Like overall, they're quite nice. Like the background's quite nice. I think in this one particular, as there's like a lot of jumping, it's kind of interesting that it's what's the word? It's like it's the only thing visible on the screen for a lot of it. So it'd be nice if there was maybe some sort of like parallaxing effect or something like that.
Yeah.
Just again to sort of help us give a sense of where we are in the level. But overall, like yeah, the graphics that they've got are like quite good. They're consistent. Nothing feels hugely out of place. Like some of the monster sprites are maybe a little bit different to one another, but not like in a major way. And I would say for the most part the graphics are even appealing. Like even the fact that they've gone to like the trouble of making the pause menu text like not the default Unity text, I think is a nice touch. So I think that would make me say sure, yeah, it goes up to yeah, even excellent, I think, for the graphics.
Yeah, and especially also the beginning with the Greek
actually
pictures, that also really
a nice touch
thematically. Yeah.
But I think, for example, it doesn't quite reach up to praiseworthy because we've got like a guy in sort of like medieval armor rather than he doesn't look like a Greek protagonist. So.
That's true. Yeah.
But okay, audio. So I can't hear any music at the minute. I'm pretty sure there was some, and there was certainly like some noises when we were hitting the monsters in a previous level, but there doesn't seem to be at the minute.
Okay. Any music in this screen?
No, not in
the
the
waiting
screen either. I'm trying to remember whether there was on the first menu. Let's enter this area and just see if there's a soundtrack that kicks off. No, not here either, unfortunately.
That
skeleton also doesn't seem to be reacting much. Oh, there he goes. I tell you what, I'm going to quit out of it again and start it back up, just because I want to see if there was some initial music in that first cutscene that we had.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm going to check. Yep, volume's still on full. So yeah, it doesn't seem like we've got much in the way of background music, unfortunately. Like there was some use of sound effects, but not an enormous amount either. Let's go back to it. I could deal with Ares relatively well. Yeah, there is some music here. I knew I'd heard some music at some point in the game.
Yeah, I remember asking you and you said some epic music or something like that, more battle music or something.
So it feels like it's only in this spot, because it wasn't in the initial cutscene, and it wasn't in the other levels. So I'm not sure if that's a bug or if they just weren't able to implement it in all of the scenes. So I would say that's...
Well, a
satisfactory is some audio and music, and it feels like that's kind of where we are. Like there's
so there's both some effects and some music.
Yes, although the use of it is quite limited. Okay, so bugs. Before all of that.
Mechanics.
Meaningful play, so mechanics. So we've got sort of fairly standard platforming mechanics. We've got attacking. We've got enemies that attack us. We've got a number of different types of enemies, although they don't seem to react particularly differently to one another.
There's bosses.
There are bosses. There's these things. It's a little bit intermittent. I guess we have sort of the hub level select thing. I don't know whether calling that a mechanic is a little bit generous. Oh, I think is that the first time I've actually died?
I think yes. Yeah.
I'm not sure how that happened. It's not happened before. Okay, so interesting. Died again that time. Not sure how. Okay, so I would say there's definitely a set of consistent mechanics, like typical platform mechanics. We've got jumping, we've got attacking, and I would say they're probably complementary as well. Like if they all worked as we expected, which we'll get onto in a minute, then they would be perfectly reasonable. I don't think there's necessarily a wide set of them. Like we've got some, like in this level, for example, we've got some evidence of like traps and things like that, and other bits and pieces. But overall, there's only so much in the way of mechanics. So I think they probably still hit a good there, or perhaps between a satisfactory and a good. What do you think?
That's a hard choice. Between a set of consistent and a set of complementary mechanics. So they are definitely consistent, as you said. And yeah, maybe in between, like it feels like there could be a bit more.
Yeah, it's like partly it's difficult to tell, but like partly because of the controls and partly because there seem to be a few bugs. Which is making it a bit hard to judge, but I think from what we've seen, I don't think there's not a huge amount of different mechanics that we're able to sort of utilize that sort of give enough that they can fully complement one another. So I think between the two is probably fine.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of which, controls. I would say So a pass would be few or challenging controls. Satisfactory would be a reasonable set of usable controls. Partly, we've got few controls just because there's few mechanics to be interacting with. And I would say they're certainly challenging to use, and also I don't seem to be able to... Oh, interesting, I can't... Okay, another slight bug we found there. Yeah, so the jump is a bit too high, the movement is unfortunately a little bit too floaty, like the momentum isn't quite right. It takes us like quite a while to stop running after we let go of the button and change it, like, so I'm running right and I'm now going left. Oh, I hit a skeleton, so not the best example, but going right and going left, and it takes until there for us to turn around, which, again, sort of going back to like the idea of these things being complementary, doesn't really fit sort of like the platformer style, particularly with some of the jumps we've got to make. It's a little bit too unresponsive. So I think it's probably at the pass level there.
Yeah. And
yeah, like a poor would be limited or difficult controls. And I don't think it's quite there. Like we can definitely get through it. It's just a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Or apparently I died that time, and I'm not sure how.
And how about bugs?
So I think we are probably around... so again, a pass would be the game is simple or there are serious bugs. Oh, nicely demonstrating there. That's... I mean, it's not game-breaking, but it's a bit of a frustrating bug. And again, we've got some enemies that are just sort of walking around in midair. The fact that we also can't hit them actually is quite a serious bug. Oh, that one I seem to be able to hit. Although, am I only... Hang on a second.
Oh, wait.
If I face this direction... I'm only able to face one direction.
Ah.
Oh, okay, I'm hitting that guy now. Okay, but now he's making the noise and he's not flashing. Okay. Yeah, I think this is getting to the realm of serious bugs. I think, like, individually, they're not game-breaking, but taken all together, it makes it very, very challenging to play the game as it should be able to be played.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably down at the pass level. Like we can sort of get our way through it, but we're getting through it in spite of the bugs rather than the lack of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of story engine.
This is a bit hard because so we have the game world story and story to game world. And
so game world to story, we have effectively the option of, okay, we complete a level, we get a soul, we can go to Hades. In fact, now is probably an excellent opportunity to, if I go to the main menu, let's just look at that second cutscene as we talk about this.
Yeah. So that's the one that we saw.
No, this is if we get 3 souls and we give him 2 of them.
Ah.
Blah, blah, blah. So he still tries to betray us, but okay.
Did it?
It seems to have not carried on there. So okay, so in terms of game world to story, like the main impact is if we complete all 3 levels, we get a different ending to if we complete 2 levels.
Yeah.
So a satisfactory would be some examples of where the game world impacts the story. Pass would be sparse or minor examples. And I don't think it's minor because it changes the ending. Fair enough. It's currently slightly bugged again in this example, but it's the problem is it's few, but it's an important one. So I guess between a pass and a satisfactory, maybe, if we're being perhaps a little bit generous there. The problem is story to game world, right? Because there is nothing in sort of like the story impacts the game world at all. The game world is totally separate from the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Partly because there's very little interplay between the story and the game at all. It's like effectively bookended, right? We have like a cutscene that sets the story up, we play through the game, and then we have a cutscene that ends it. And there's not really a lot of interaction between the two throughout, and I think we're going to mention that again in a second. So this might be down at the level of absent. So there's a story premise, but no serious attempt at integrating the story with the game.
Yeah, I don't see, as you mentioned, yeah, I think that's where it's at.
Similarly, in terms of branches, there's no real branching structure. I'm going to reboot the game as well while I'm talking about this, so we can look at something other than that. I get there's the branch at the end, which is when we decide to go to Hades, have we done 0 levels, 1 level, or more than 1 level? And that's, well, we'll talk about agency again in a second, but it's just
you could argue that the branch with 0 levels done is not really a branch because it
just takes you back to the beginning. Yeah. In the same way that you can't argue that, well, you know, if you get killed by an enemy, then that's a branch because that ends the story. So,
exactly.
So it's not absent because that would be a story with no branches. A poor would be few minor branching points. And the issue is it's not a minor branching point because it's it changes the ending, but the problem is it's the only branching point. So I think it's still at the level of poor.
Yeah.
So a pass would be some minor branching points, and again, we don't have some or even few. We have one really. So one of the things the students are asked to hand in alongside their game is a little short report talking about their story engine and the structure of their story. And unfortunately, I don't think they handed in one for this. So all we've got to work on is the gameplay that we're seeing. So that makes it really, really tricky, unfortunately. So I think it has to be a poor because, again, this is the only branching point that we can really see.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Although it has a more than a minor impact on the story, there's really only one sort of choice, and it's at the ending, and it's not connected to the gameplay, unfortunately. Similarly, quality of choices. Absent would be a story with no choices of consequence, and there is a choice because there is a branching point, but there's few interesting choices, and the player agency is problematic, really. Maybe it's a bit above that, so that would be a poor, and a pass would be few interesting choices. Again, they're not so much few as one. There is sort of, I mean, I guess we have the choice of which of the realms do we go to in which order, but ultimately we still have to go through all of them if we want the choice at the end.
Yeah.
And there's, I guess, a limited amount of agency in we're forced to fight at least 2 of the gods no matter what. We can't sort of say killing a god seems a bit iffy, let's not.
Yeah. So it's either at the poor level or between poor and satisfactory. I'm wondering.
Or do you mean between a poor and a pass?
Yeah. Between a poor and a pass. Because I suppose you can say that player agency, for example, they do, the thing with if you haven't played any levels, it doesn't just end. It tells you, like, there's a cutscene that tells you, oh, you can't do that. So in a sense,
that feels a little bit generous. I think we kind of have to say that it's at the poor level, right? There's really only one choice, and we also don't forget we don't have really any information to make that choice with. We're told go and get 2 of these 3 souls.
Yeah.
Like as we're going through, we don't necessarily have a sense of the consequences of the choice we're making, or even that we're really making a choice. So yeah, I think unfortunately it's at the poor, which is a bit of a shame. Having a look at the poetic side of a thing. So in terms of the framing and the premise, they've sort of hit the nail on the head. It's the very first thing that we see when we load the game, and
Yeah.
and the same with the ending. It's the very last thing we see effectively. If we got all that we wished, it wouldn't be great. So in terms of like the sort of, like I say, they've kind of bookended the story, and in those story bits, it works okay. Like the premise underlines the sort of theme of the fable that they're trying to tell. As we've said before, the gameplay itself is pretty removed from the sort of story. I don't think it necessarily works against it. They're kind of telling us a very similar story to Shadow of the Colossus, right? Or I guess God of War as well, for a slightly more direct comparison.
Yeah.
But the actual gameplay doesn't really sort of carry the same theme throughout it. So if we have a look at poetics on the mark scheme, a pass would be the narrative and the gameplay have conflicts. And I don't think it does. I think it's better than that. Satisfactory would be they don't interfere with another, but the key mechanics have little to do with the themes of the story. And I think that's pretty much where we are, right?
I think you're right. Yeah, that sounds correct. And what about the pacing? So we have a final, let's say, an ending.
So within each of the levels, there is like sort of main level and then presumably boss fight. Although I've only managed to get to one of them, so let's try having a look at another, and we'll see if we get to that.
Try the one underground.
Yeah, I think
because this one has a lot of
bottomless pits in that one.
Yeah.
Which I guess is kind of nice, right? They've tried to tie the design of the area to the god that inhabits it to a degree. So within each level there is is there ascendant pacing within each level? Like there is definitely a boss fight at the end, but otherwise it's relatively flat, right? And again, partly this is due to the difficulty of the mechanics and some of the bugs. Although I say that, here's like a slightly more trickier section than earlier, so maybe within each level there is some ascendant pacing, but it's difficult to navigate because of some of those issues.
Yeah.
In fact, I could just do that. So,
and it feels like that's the okay. Quite a long level actually.
Yeah, although I feel like I'm bypassing a lot of it. Oh no, not another bottomless pit. My one weakness. And that puts us, right back at the beginning. Okay.
So
a pass would be the pacing is unclear or flat. A satisfactory would be some ascendant pacing, and a good would be ascendant pacing with a clear final peak. And excellent would be with multiple peaks throughout. Interestingly, I think you're right. They kind of do have the multiple peaks. They kind of have the final climax, although it's a narrative climax and it's quite separate from the game. I guess it would be nice if there was like some additional sort of raising of the narrative stakes as we were going on. For example, in Shadow of the Colossus, every time you kill a Colossus, like something kind of bad happens to you, right? This sort of black ooze sort of starts taking you over as you go, and you become aware of the fact that you're sort of getting weaker or corrupted as you're going. Whereas this, there's not a lot in the way that changes between each level, partly because you can do the levels in any order.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, they've got some good elements, they've got some good elements and some excellent elements, but I think overall it probably averages out to a satisfactory, because overall the pacing is a little bit flat with some elements of good.
So maybe in between.
I think a satisfactory.
Yeah. Okay.
Next, techniques.
So we definitely have that the cutscene, you could say, at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. I think that was actually a really good use of that technique. I like it's a very simple cutscene, but again, this is a small prototype that's sort of just showing off their ability with these skills. So even just some text over effectively a slideshow, I'm happy to count that as use of a cutscene, even if it's a relatively simple one.
So at least one. Satisfactory would be used of at least one game lighting technique.
Yeah, the issue is,
do we see anything?
Are there any others? There's no real sort of environmental storytelling. For example, none of the enemies particularly match the god that they're done with. There's no sort of dialogue between the hero and sort of the final boss, which I feel is a bit of a wasted opportunity. You could have a little bit of dialogue between Ares and us before we fight that says, don't you know that Hades is only going to betray you or something? And again, characterizing Hades, but then also giving us a little bit of information when we're making those choices.
Oh yeah, that would be.
So I don't think there's really much in the way of other sort of techniques that they've used, but I think they still hit a solid satisfactory with that. I like the way that they're telling the part of the story that they're telling.
Yeah.
Okie doke. Which brings us on to the last one, which is feedback.
Let's see. So our primary piece of feedback at the lab was focused on the nature of the endings and how they needed to be distinct from each other in order for the decisions of the player to result in a meaningful difference in the outcome. We responded to this by altering our current endings and adding a new ending. Now Orpheus can be killed by Hades for refusing to execute any of the gods he faces, trade his soul to Hades in return for his wife's freedom for killing too few gods, but at least one, and kill all the gods and become Hades' minion, his wife being released from the underworld. Each ending has a distinct outcome. The first results in the death of the hero and his love interest. However, the gods are spared.
Okay, that's interesting, because that doesn't seem to be particularly apparent through the gameplay, right? So I could not see a way of sparing any of the other gods, right? We had to bring at least one soul for him to speak to us. So we weren't sparing, we were just killing one of them rather than sparing all of them.
Yeah. And they also say, we were also warned about letting our story stray too far from the original moral of the fable. It was imperative that the story reflect our interpretation of the fable's message in order to give the story our game thought significant meaning. As we took the fable to be a lesson in being careful what you wish for, our story is based around a hero who is desperately wishing for his wife to be brought back to him, and being willing to do anything, and a god decides to exploit that, and yeah, the consequences are that you shouldn't want everything, or if you want everything, get everything, bad things happen. And that's pretty much what they said.
Okay, so I think I remember speaking to them about that in the lab, and yeah, I agree that it is very tricky if you're sort of putting a big choice in a game where one is follow the moral of the fable and the other is ignore it, then you can end up trying to effectively undermine your own theme. So I can see that they've been careful to try and make sure both their endings still sort of underline the overall theme. I think that is a good change, or rather a good, not even if it's not a change from what they were planning on doing, but it's a good thing to keep in mind as they were designing it. I'm not sure what they were saying about the way they've redone their endings, and it's a bit of a shame that we couldn't see the second ending because it didn't quite work and they haven't included it in their notes. But yeah, so from the sounds of it, I would say the feedback was addressed and the changes have been have had limited success or been somewhat successful?
Limited success. I mean, the thing with the sparing of the gods and not killing them, that's like we couldn't really see that.
Yeah, yeah. There definitely didn't seem to be a way to do that, and I'm not sure if that's just because it's not explained very well, or they just mean that, you know, effectively you kill 2 gods and then spare the last one by just not doing it.
Yeah, maybe.
So yeah, I think maybe between the 2 for that. So that would be sort of between a pass and a satisfactory.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, and this game is Blood for Blood. So really nice title screen on this one, like very sort of eerie, dramatic music. We've got a castle. We've got some options. We've got a tutorial. Let's have. Okay, so as far as integrated tutorial goes, maybe they haven't learned all the lessons from the first coursework, but hey, it's a tutorial.
Yes, it's something.
So there are 3 stats that define your ending. Cards are coloured based on the stat that they affect. Grey coloured cards have no effect. If both cards are the same, they lead to the same outcome. So, this is why this, integrated tutorials are good, and just dumping a bunch of text is bad, because I have no idea what half of this means yet. So grey cards have no effect. If both cards are the same, they lead to the same outcome. You can hover over unlocks and stats to get more information. Okay, I'm sure it will all become clear. Let's unlocks. So so this is kind of nice. So I like it when games sort of that have multiple endings will show you how many of them you've found so far. And it's even got achievements. When was the last time we saw one of these that had achievements in it? That's great.
That's...
Okay.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay, so we've got continue and... Okay, so again, some really nice music. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. Okay, so we've got 3 stats that affect our endings. I'm assuming that is... Oh, there we go. I was going to say bottle, heart, and cross. So we've got reputation with vampires, vitality, and reputation with the villagers. Sire, you're finally awake. I was beginning to think you'd left this mortal realm in your sleep. So I can't click on this, so I guess I just click one of the continue cards. That's a really interesting way of doing dialogue or cutscene. I'm assuming most of the game is sort of navigated through these cards, and incorporating the cutscene narrative elements into that, I really like. That's kind of cool. I cannot think what I would do without my... Oh, good, I'm an eternal vampire lord. There we go. So here we go. May I interest you in some of my some blood wine, my lord? So we've got not now. So grey cards have no effect, right?
Yep.
Yellow presumably is going to affect the yellow stat. Now we've got more vitality. My lord, I must remind you, Count Visage will be visiting soon. Such formalities are important when tensions are so high between humans and vampires.
Oh.
Okay, so we kind of have the immediate sort of here's how our moral choice system is going to work. I like that the cards are sort of color coded as well. So we obviously have the ones for the stats, but the fact that the person talking to us is colored red means he's going to
a vampire.
Yeah,
probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I found this village boy in your lands. Consider his blood a gift from me. We'll spare him. We'll be magnanimous. That's annoying. So interestingly, the card was green, didn't affect the green stat.
I see, yeah.
But, that was relatively easy to intuit that would happen. You've gone soft for the human. Sire, have you ever played Reigns?
I don't think so.
So it's a game with a very similar sort of aesthetic. It's a sort of choice-making game, but it's sort of done through swiping over cards. I wonder if that's what inspired this. Village man. Sorry to bother you, sir, but my son went missing. Yeah, here he is. Why would I lie about this? Oh, because so that's interesting. I didn't intuit that. I don't know why giving the boy back would hurt my relationship with the vampires, because presumably I've hurt them already, hurt the relationship already. What does giving him back do? Other vampires are hunting humans in your territory. Alright, let's go all human this playthrough, and we'll see what happens. Ooh, mysterious figure. If words suffice not, then blows must follow. Which of the fables do you think they've gone for with this one? Okay, so they've spelled it out a little bit explicitly there, but sure. So this is kind of interesting as well, right? We've been, in the tutorial and up until this point, we've had 3 colours. And it's very obvious that this card relates to this colour, this card relates to this colour. Now we've got a purple card, which doesn't fit in. And again, it's a mysterious figure. It doesn't fit into our expectations. So that actually works very nicely. Act with haste those words you'll swallow. Ooh, even putting in rhymes in our morals, are we? Your judgment day approaches, step carefully. There is a pie merchant. I love pies. Pies are great. Through my own piety and religious commitment to the baked goods, I offer you the finest pie. Is that
interesting?
Is that what piety comes from? I see. I mean, I want a pie. I don't know if vampires can eat pie. I also don't know why taking one would upset the vampire lords. Oh, it doesn't. It hurts my vitality.
Maybe because it was a religious.
It's because the pie contained garlic.
Yeah. I see.
So, that's interesting. Because there was no indication of that, right? So I had no way of basing my choice on anything really there. My lord, the Mana Cleric's invented a new potion. How should we test it? Test it on me, let's test it on a villager. And again, red card doesn't affect the red stat, it affects the green stat. So, I feel alive. Good for you. Okay, that's quite funny. Okay, so I have some gripes with maybe the mechanics and the information design, but the writing's pretty good. My lord, we were building a new house. He's stuck under a wooden beam. Ooh, interesting. We've got 2 green options. Again, what does this mean? I have no idea of knowing. Presumably they're both good. Is this unlocked because the villagers like us?
Interesting. So one took some of your vitality because you did it, and the other would supposedly wouldn't do that.
Oh, the humans are suspicious. I see. Were we not meant to? I kind of assumed they all knew I was a vampire. I don't know why I assumed that. Cameron is right at the door. Again, care to join me on a raid on? I think we should, because otherwise we're going to be in trouble with the vampires. What would you like to do with this human? Nom 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 nom. Why is spare her yellow? Is that
because that would probably lower your vitality because you need to feed on humans to survive?
Again, you'd think spare her is going to increase our reputation with the villagers. Maybe
it's also going to do that.
Let's. So I would pick this, but now I'm picking this because I don't understand what will happen and I want to. Which is again, not great. So I think I can see why they've tried, and you were right. It did affect that. Appears the woman stabbed you in your sleep.
Oh,
but I spared her, right? I guess I didn't release. I didn't release her. I just didn't kill her. So she stabbed me. All right. So you were right. That did affect my vitality, although not for the reasons we thought. So I can see why they might have tried to obfuscate exactly what the cards do, because they don't want it to be a calculation.
Exactly, yeah.
I think there are ways to do this without it becoming a straight up or down calculation, right? There are... So, again, to refer back to Reigns will often have cards that, decrease both stats by a little bit, or one stat by a lot. So even though you sort of know roughly what the consequences will be, you don't know how bad they'll be, but you at least know what stats they'll affect.
Aha, I see.
So
Yeah.
even though it's like partly it becomes a calculation of trying to, balance these stats, and to an extent, if you're basing your gameplay around balancing numbers, it's kind of important that you have some idea of what's going to affect them. They do other things to sort of prevent it from being like a total calculation where you can perfectly balance things, because the cards have other consequences as well. Sire, knights are searching your lands. Let's... Oh, no, I got stabbed again. You are hurt, but they've been dealt with. What a trophy of a prisoner you have, sure to impress the others. The dealer's hand won't show till late. Your allies will decide your fate. Your judgment day is near, step carefully.
That feels like pacing, making you...
Ooh, yeah. It's sort of like telling us that the clock's ticking and things like that. And so the narrative events, would you say they are escalating in drama? So we start off with, a house falling, well, someone offering us a pie, and then a house falling down, and us nearly revealing our identity, and then like a raid on a village, and then knights, and it feels like that's escalating a bit as well. Like the actual sort of like the events that are happening are like the stakes are being raised. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Confront the vampire. Oh, interesting. Our reputation went up because we confronted the rogue vampire. You left me on that forsaken sunrise, weak, exhausted, and with no cover from the sun.
Oh no, that's not...
Oh, that's cool. I like that. I like that a lot. This is a flashback, so it's black and white. That's really clever. I like that. Alright, kind of on that note, let's actually take a look at this against the mark scheme.
Okay, so we can start... Oh wow. Yeah, we can start with, I suppose, information design.
Okie doke. So, what information do we have? Well, we've got our three main stats. We've got...
the card colors. And...
So here's the thing. We've got the card colours, but the cards don't always affect the same stat that they're coloured with, right? Even if we didn't know that whether this would go up or down, we could probably guess, but it doesn't always affect it.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know, I feel like there's it's a taboo in vampire society to drink the blood of another vampire. Oh, no, there we go, it is.
Okay, wow.
See, again, that card was green, but it affected the red stat.
This feels like an ending, maybe.
Yeah.
The choices are made.
So I'm just taking a look at the mark scheme side of things. So we've got good would be all key information is shown. Excellent would be all key information is shown. Like partly. So this is tricky, right? Like they're deliberately hiding the information.
Yeah, exactly. Obfuscating on purpose. And that's hard to...
And the problem is, it makes... it's really tricky, because it... On the one hand, it means that you're playing a bit more naturally. You have perhaps more freedom to choose options because you're not basing it on the impact it will have on numbers. But equally, it means you're kind of choosing a bit blind, right? Because it's like I don't know, is this going to kill me immediately? Is it not?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see this ending and then we'll come back to it. So, Count Vizard is here. You have shown yourself to be a valiant vampire. Really? It feels like we didn't. The mayor is here. You have shown yourself to be a valuable asset to our village. The natural peace broker between human and vampire. We negotiate a century-long peace, and we are a hero.
Wow.
So you finish the game with... Okay. So I'm guessing from the endings this is going to be high vampire, low human, low vampire, high human, and presumably low both, and get.
Or just die.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So we get an achievement for seeing the fortune teller for the first time, one for eating the garlic pie.
Nah.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Does it tell us what these are? No, they're locked. Okay, so in terms of information design, it's annoying, but I think I'm going to put it between, or I'm thinking between a satisfactory and a good.
Yeah, because they could have done it in a better or different way.
Like, not all of the key information is shown. I understand that they've done it deliberately, though. And for the most part, everything else, like the fact that, the cards are coloured like really nicely, we know that this one is on our side because he's tied to our vitality. We know that like this will give us, again, like I think that's the thing, right? If it wasn't that if a yellow card might not affect the yellow stat, it might affect a different one. I think that's the main problem I got with it. If it was a yellow card and you don't know how it will affect the yellow stat, or if it will affect a different stat as well, but sometimes they just seem unrelated. Let's go full vampire this run. So I think between a good and a satisfactory.
Yeah. And the graphics themselves, I think they're consistent and effective.
So graphics wise, I agree. I would say they're consistent, effective, appealing.
And appealing as well, yeah.
And you know what? Because of that really nice touch with the black and white and the signifying that it's a flashback, I'm going to say that they're thematically resonant as well.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of thought put into the...
Yeah, even the fact that like the cards have backs and spin around, like actually is really, really good. Pie merchant. No, I do not want a pie, thank you.
I wonder if...
Preoccupied.
Can
I remove marks for puns?
No, if your green thing goes to 0, I wonder if the villagers would attack you or something.
Let's find out.
And how about the audio? Is there any...
Yes, so we've got some lovely sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, some nice background music at least. I can't think of a way of describing it right now. We've got some little audio effects as well when we pick a particular option. There's even like nice little bits of feedback as we sort of mouse over the cards, that nice little sort of really satisfying like flicking noise you get.
That sounds... Let's see, so a good of the complementary audio effects and music, and from what you're saying, it feels like it's at least there.
Yeah, I think so. I think...
And maybe appealing effects and music?
I'm not sure it goes... Yeah, so I think it's probably excellent. It's complementary and appealing. I don't know whether it's sophisticated. Again, there are things where, you could do some like really cool adaptive stuff where the music changes based on your stats. So as like your vampire stat goes up, the music becomes, more dark and more minor, and if the human one goes up, it becomes, more cheerful and folky and major or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
But otherwise, I think it might be... Yeah, I think it's definitely excellent, maybe approaching praiseworthy.
Okay, so in between or just leave it at excellent, maybe?
I think probably in between.
Okay, and now this is hard, the mechanics, because it doesn't feel like there is a lot.
Yeah, so this is the thing, right? The gameplay feels really, really good, but in terms of mechanics, there's not a lot I'm working with. A lot of the I don't know what you call it, like the engagement or the enjoyment of this game comes from the writing rather than necessarily the play, and part of that is tied to the choices in the information design as well. Like I'm not in a way, by totally obfuscating the effects of the cards, they've removed a lot of the gameplay, because it's not like a case of, I have to manage these things. Although I say that, I've said this time I'm going to set out to be a horrible vampire, and I mean I've managed that, even if it's not written explicitly on the cards. So there's enough hints and information on the cards that I can intuit the effects are going to have. There's a couple of curveballs, like the garlic pie, but that was pretty funny. Okay, so in terms of mechanics, there's a set of consistent mechanics. Is there a set of complementary mechanics? I guess, what are the mechanics, right? The mechanics are click on a card, it changes some numbers.
Yeah. And that... Is there a change in music here?
No, actually. I was kind of hoping there would be. That's sort of why I was umming and ahhing between the excellent and the... between excellent and prize. So yeah, maybe the audio is sort of excellent rather than just above excellent. But yeah, in terms of the mechanics, so I think we can agree there's not a wide set of mechanics here. Complementary is also kind of difficult. Because again, it's just click on card, change a number. I think we might be between a satisfactory and a good. I think it is. So here's what I will say. I will say, like, this game is simple and very effective. And I think the effective will sort of show itself in other areas. In terms of the mechanics, though, I think we sort of have to look at the fact that they are, at the end of the day, quite simple.
Yeah. Okay, and the controls, I suppose, as well, because it's not really a lot of...
So here's the thing, right? A pass would be few or challenging controls, and there are few controls.
Yeah. Because it's such a simple mechanic, which doesn't mean it's a bad game, but...
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're better than a pass, because it's not that the controls are, bad. It's just that there's not a lot of them.
But they are usable.
They're definitely usable. It's smooth is an interesting one, because it often refers to, sort of like moving through a game world in a sort of like text-based game like this. Like the primary mode of interaction is just clicking on stuff. So I'm not sure we can call it sort of like smooth in that sense.
Yeah.
So I think probably around a satisfactory though.
Satisfactory. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult because there are. It's very difficult to sort of talk about the controls when the only control is click on card. Sorry, I'm too invested in the story now.
Yeah.
Controls. Yeah, we talked about controls. Bugs. Again, it's
not that complex.
It's not that complex. So, in terms of like mechanics that we're interacting with, it's not. Under the hood, I mean, so in terms of like, the way things are put together, like we've got the little flourishes of cards moving, spinning, we've got the like in terms of, is it complex enough to be a prototype for a coursework or a portfolio? I think yes, it is complex enough.
Yeah.
And given that, we've not found any bugs, so it hits an excellent. And if we find any bugs, we'll revisit that. I think we can both say that it's not of higher complexity, so it doesn't quite reach the prizeworthy. But in terms of a game to showcase your storytelling skills, it's about the right amount of complexity. Which I guess is sort of what I was going back sort of with the mechanic. Like, there's few mechanics, so it maybe sort of scores a bit lower on the mechanic side of things, but in terms of like it being bug-free and a complex enough game, it hits the excellent there. Okay, so in terms of how well this game fulfilled the brief, so first off, the story engine. So in their game notes that they handed in along with this, do they talk about their story engine?
Yeah, so they do say a few things. Our story engine works by deferred culminate choice and consecutive stretches of story that diverge, then converge. Each choice within the stretches of story affect the vampire reputation, villager reputation, and vitality stat, which determine the ending. Each decision has the next decision associated with it, hence enabling each decision to diverge by having different next cards. And that's all they talk about.
Okay, so this is, again, another tricky one of these to sort of talk about, because the story engine, the story side of the game and the game side of the game are just so closely intertwined that there's not a lot separating them. So, for example, are there... it's interesting, because it's not like having high stats affects the choices we can make as we're playing, right? It's not like a certain choice would be locked unless we'd gained enough reputation. Similarly, horde of humans approximate. There's each of the little sort of scenes or events, if you like. There's the sort of the rogue vampire and things like that. None of those seem to affect anything other than stats, and the stats only seem to affect the ending, really.
Yeah. Maybe. What are the...
Oh, there we go.
Ah, I see.
Alright, let's go... I guess, yeah, let's just try and die this time and see what happens.
Yeah, so where should we...
Sorry, I got distracted by playing the game again. Remind me, what were the key points that they said in their game notes?
It's pretty much what we've already seen with the game, where the three different points on the top, they determine the ending, and that the choices diverge then converge, and each decision has an associated has the next decision associated with it, which enables each decision to diverge by having different next cards.
Okay, so game world affecting the story. So if we assume the game world is us managing the numbers effectively,
yeah,
I think that's going to be the strongest side of this, because there are a number of different endings which we'll get to. So virtually all of the elements of gameplay, if you like, have some impact on the story. So, in terms of... part of the problem is the story only seems to change particularly dramatically at the end, I think. So I haven't seen it doesn't feel like these events change a huge amount based on our previous choices.
Yeah. I also haven't seen anything like that.
Other than their sort of overreaching factor of the numbers. So I think for game world to story, we might be somewhere between a good and an excellent. A good would be a number of examples where the game world impacts the story, and excellent would be consistent interplay. And it feels like it's actually, that sort of consistent interplay, because everything we do in gameplay is affecting the outcome of the story. It might only be affecting it in one way, but it's everything we do in the game is having an impact on the story. Prizeworthy, it would have to impact it through different mechanisms, and as we've already said, there's only really the one mechanism. But I think game to story, I think, is excellent. The trick is going to be story to game world. And again, closely linked, but is the story having any impact on the way we're actually playing? Like, it's not unlocking new choices, it's not locking off different sort of bits of narrative, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and the thing is, they don't provide a table with the choice tree and all that, so I can't also tell you if we're missing something on that front. Are you trying to...
Yeah, I was trying to get high human, low vampire this time, but I sort of forgot halfway through. Again, I'm getting distracted playing the game. So yeah, in terms of storytelling, so a pass, for example, would be sparse or minor examples of where the story impacts the game world. Poor would be support for story elements in the game, but the story has no real impact on the game world, and it feels like we could be there. So just one more time, just to make sure we're getting sort of their intentions. What was it they said about this in their game notes? I'm going to listen this time and not click on cards.
So they say our story engine works by deferred culminate choice and consecutive stretches of story that diverge then converge, which we've already seen.
That's it. That's the gameplay affecting the story.
Yeah, each choice within the stretches of story affect the vampire reputation, villager reputation, and vitality, and that determines the ending, and then each decision has a next decision associated with it, hence enabling each decision to diverge by having different next cards. And that's what they say. So
they're
as
saying
I said,
effectively, okay, so there's a card we can pick, and if we pick one, we'll see another next card, and if we pick this, we'll see another next card.
Yes.
Again, that feels like that's the... it's tricky when they're this closely linked. That feels like, in this case, it would be the game affecting the story, because it's the...
But at the same time, it does make sense that the story that you did through the action of picking changes the next card. Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's very tricky when they're this closely linked. I think for the fact that we're umming and ahhing over this, it feels like this might be between a pour and a pass. The structure for it is there. And like you say,
so
if you sort of squint at it a bit, you're right. You can see that kind of as I'm picking a story choice here by deciding whether to join the raid, and that will affect what cards I get next time. That will affect my stats in the gameplay, and they will be different to if I pick this one. But I think to make it super clear, and in fact more impactful and perhaps more engaging as a game, you could do things where if you maintain a high reputation, you get bonus cards like a shiny red card if you've got like a high reputation or something like that, or certain cards become unplayable or are on fire or something if one of your stats is too low or something like something to really hammer home these numbers numbers are affecting the outcome, but also the story is going to change these change the choices that you have available to you in dramatic ways. So I think it's probably between a pour and a pass. I think you could make the argument that it's there, but it's not really as well developed as it is the other way around. Yeah,
I think I agree now that you said that.
Okay, so interesting. It's going to be similar for when we're talking about the structure, right? Which is what we're going to talk about right now. This game is either nothing but branching points, or there's really only one sort of important branch, which is what happens at the end.
I mean, they do mention how it's diverging and converging. So there's one choice, and then it converges immediately, and then another. So
this one's kind of annoying. This actually, I think, goes back to what I was saying about the the story engine. So this time it was phrased differently, right? We didn't capture the woman in a raid. We refused to go on the raid. So instead of having captured her, we found her hiding. And we spared her. And then she stabbed us anyway because she doesn't want to be a prisoner.
I see.
So we get the same element of story despite the previous... So it doesn't really have that same branch, right?
Yeah. Let me see. So in that case, yeah, it's hard. So pass would be some minor branching points, satisfactory some branching points, and then good several branching points. And
Okay, so in terms of branches, I think, yeah, there are a lot of different ways of sort of like approaching each of these situations that, well, there are at least two ways of approaching every situation the game presents to you. So... Do we think it's a network of branches and paths then? I'm not quite sure it's up at the prizeworthy. I think it might hit the excellent level because, like you say, every choice is a branch. But although, as we've just seen, they don't always branch fully.
Yeah. A number of branching points throughout the game. So it's throughout the game, small choices, which culminate in the final. Oh, did that unlock another?
Okay, so it's interesting that that's effectively a bad ending, despite it being just the reverse of.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this one must be for having low with both, which feels like there's still 2 achievements I've yet to get as well. You say they didn't hand in a story structure graph along with their game notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame because it would help us sort of puzzle out the structure and also how to get those last achievements. But okay. All right. In terms of the choices, then.
Yes. So what good would be some interesting choices and attempts to manage player agency.
So yeah.
Would we count these as interesting choices throughout the game?
I think I would. I've griped at them a little bit about, the sort of
not knowing
some of the hidden information. But as I said at the time, I can see that they've done that deliberately to try and make the choices interesting. I am not sure they had to do that to make these choices interesting. I think you could do that with still revealing some of the numbers.
But it's certainly a way.
But yeah, absolutely. So here, for example, we not only have a moral quandary, we have we know full well that we have to sort of manage the relationship of our allies and how we want to do about it.
Yeah, you're right. So an excellent would be interesting choices and an effective system for managing player agency. The managing player agency part is interesting.
And again, this kind of almost ties back to what I was saying about if you have if you lock off certain choices based on the stats or the previous choices.
Yeah,
that's some attempt at managing agency in that way. It feels like they've sort of taken a different route and they're managing agency just through the sort of the branch structure overall.
Yeah, I think that's how they explain it as well. So that's hard because then effective system. I mean, yeah, it does work.
Yeah, so I think we might be between a good and an excellent for this.
Yeah, I think because, as you said, there could be another way of managing player agency on top of just choices.
So
this.
partly they are managing agency by only ever presenting the player with two options, right? So for example, we can feed her or spare her, but we can't, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something else. We can't release her, right? If we spare her, she's kept as a prisoner. We can't turn her into another vampire or something. We don't have that option. So the way it manages agency is by only ever giving us two choices. And in a lot of games, that would maybe feel a bit constrictive, or at least you'd have to be sort of careful in the way you frame it. Because they've made the entire mechanic of their game, here are two choices, pick one, it works quite well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say between good and excellent, or possibly even at an excellent for this.
I can't tell. Maybe in between.
Okay, yeah, between a good. I think you're right, because I think it is. Like, on the one hand,
just
it's
a bit more, and a few. Maybe more variety in the way they manage the player agency as well.
Yeah.
That would put it to excellent and beyond.
Okay, which takes us to design elements, so things like the poetics and the techniques. So in terms of poetics, what do we think was the fable that they based their thing on? So it's the farmer and the cranes, right? Which is if words don't suffice, blows follow.
Yes.
Do we feel that carries across? Are there situations where we try and talk through a problem, and if we can't, we have to enact violence?
That's
It almost feels sort of like the opposite, whereas like if we can keep everyone friendly, we can avoid violence.
Well, for example, the part where you spare the woman and she stabs
you, yeah.
That feels... Yeah, like the choice is either action and, kill her or whatever, or just words by saying, "Oh, I spare you," and then you get subbed. But it's kind of hard to, I don't know, see it in a sense. If they didn't say with the mysterious figure, if that didn't say the action and all that,
we'd have struggled to say, "Oh yeah, it's definitely this one."
Yeah, at least I would have struggled, because I now that I know it, I can see stuff connected with that, but otherwise it would have been a bit harder.
Yeah, so I don't think they're particularly in conflict with each other, right? There are definitely situations where sometimes we resort to violence, but I don't think the actual mechanics of play, sort of choosing one option or the other, necessarily supports the theme that they're going for. So I think I'm erring towards around a satisfactory, maybe between a satisfactory and a good.
So they don't interfere, and the key mechanics have little to do with themes. Yeah, I see. Maybe in between.
Okay, so yeah, between a satisfactory and a good. Okay, so the next one is pacing. So mechanically, the pacing doesn't really change, right? The gameplay is the same throughout. It doesn't evolve or change. Narratively, we have the fortune teller showing up to tell us, your judgment day is coming, effectively. We have a number of different events. Do they escalate in severity? It feels like they kind of do. We go from a pie to helping a house, or rather helping somebody who's in an accident building a house, to fighting off a group of knights, to an old fiend from our past or whatnot.
Yeah, and in between those things, it feels like there's smaller things.
Yeah.
So multiple or ascending with some stuff in between, like to.
Yeah, it would be nice maybe if the final peak was more of a peak.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
I think that sort of this is somewhat tied to again the slight lack of sort of mechanical gameplay, and the having the sort of fortune teller remind you repeatedly that oh no, the end is coming does sort of serve to sort of drive that onwards, and then when it happens, you get some amount of epilogue, not a huge amount, but I guess some, and even the the achievements sort of at the end kind of tie back into that.
Oh yeah, that's actually.
So it feels like it's sort of almost at the excellent level. So it's got that, like you say, it's got sort of the multiple peaks where it's sort of like the drama is ascending and there's a bit of lull between each one. I'm not sure the final peak is as clear as it could be, and I'm not sure the pacing necessarily ramps. I think partly the lack of sort of mechanical pacing almost undermines the narrative pacing a little bit. So, which is why I don't think it's quite excellent, but I think between a good and an excellent for sure.
So I don't remember if it happened in the game or how it happened in the game, but when you had the flashback and you fought with the other vampire, was that near the end?
How much? Quite near the end.
So yeah, okay, because to me that kind of feels like quite a big thing with changing the whole screen to black and white, and that's new.
Yeah, okay, but see, I guess that's what I'm saying, right? Like that's not necessarily the climax. The climax is
that
if you had to then go to the vampire coven and sort of get them to swear allegiance, and then go to the mayor and get them to swear allegiance, and it referred back to the choices you had made, as well as sort of extra stat challenges or something like that. But I think you're right. Maybe that is meant to be the ultimate climax, and then the rest is just epilogue. So maybe it does hit excellent.
Yeah, because to me the way that I was thinking about it does feel like that's a peak, and then the rest is so this is what happens. You are a good vampire or whatever, and an epilogue. So
okay.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, you've convinced me. I think it probably does hit that. Okay, so next, techniques. What do we have in the way of techniques for telling a story? Predominantly, it's cards or effectively dialogue, right?
Yes. And as you mentioned earlier, it's really nice how that is incorporated into the way you actually play. Like the mechanics are how you with the cards.
So here's the thing. A satisfactory is use of one technique. Good is use of more than one technique.
Yeah.
But I think it's are there other techniques? I don't think we can sort of count, the achievements and the meta text as part of the techniques for this, because they're not really furthering the story. And we don't sort of have any other sort of anything in the way of cutscenes. We don't particularly start in a moment of medias res. We start at a sort of natural point in the story. Yeah, so it feels like the thing is it's such a really good use of that technique that I kind of want it to be higher, but it can't reach that because it's the,
at least one.
It's the technique that they're using to tell the story, but it is a really good one. So I would say probably between a satisfactory and a good for that.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I do wonder now that you played through the game a few
No,
times, what happens?
hang on a minute. What am I talking about? It has a moment of lepsis, right? Flashback, the thing that I've already complimented already. What am I talking about? So yeah, okay, so they are definitely using more than one technique. And I remember, because it's one of the things that we talked to them about in the lectures.
So
I wouldn't say they're necessarily consistently using more than one technique. I would say they have one really good technique and one that's there that's just enough to bump them up to a good, but I don't think it necessarily hits the excellent.
Yeah, and I was thinking just if you only press the right card or the left card for the whole game playthrough, do you think that would be one of the achievements?
That's a great.
It feels like.
It's a great question. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and the feedback is the final part that we have. Let's see what they've received. So they've received 3 pieces of feedback. Make sure it relates to one of the stories, specifically the morale. Make sure your story doesn't just branch at the end. And make sure you have mechanics beyond narrative choices. Okay, so let's see how what they've done. For the first piece of feedback, we included 2 separate stretches of diverging storyline that deal with the idea of if words do not suffice. Interesting. Yeah, so if words do not suffice, plots must follow. Those being the decisions of whether to talk to or scare away the villagers searching your lands if you don't return the village boy, and whether to talk to or attack the kinsmen that search your land for the Lord's princess. This morale is also reflected by the mysterious figure. Yeah, that's
okay. Yeah.
Sure. But act with haste. Those words you swallow. Yeah. Okay, so that's how they try to fit in the morale of the story.
Okay, so yeah, I think we said if they hadn't had that mysterious figure, it would have been a lot less unclear, although just stating outright that, hey, this is the moral, doesn't necessarily tie it to the mechanics of play particularly.
So the next one they mention is about the branch, that the story shouldn't branch at the end only. What did they do? For the second piece of feedback, we structured the game so that stretches of story play out on one after the other, each with varying amounts of paths, allowing the player to branch and take different paths. Which again, we talked about that, and they've done that. Yep.
Although again, I think the major sort of change to the structure of the story is at the end. But okay, yeah. So this is the thing, right? They're using the split join to track the changes, sort of. What's the word? The consecutive choices you make with your stats. But the problem is those stats don't have an impact on what choices you see. So
yeah.
So again, I think the change they've made has had a positive effect. I think they maybe could have done a little bit extra to really solidify it. And the last one was...
The final one is interesting because the final feedback was make sure you have mechanics beyond narrative choices. And what they've done is we added the mechanics, achievements based on achieving specific events, as well as an ending tracker to allow the user to try and unlock every ending. Which
I think it would be it's a stretch to call it a mechanic because it's not something that we interact with during play. I will agree with them that I think it's a really nice touch and a bit of polish, but I don't think it impacts the mechanics as such.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so overall, I think from what we've just said, they've addressed the feedback, they've made some changes, and they've been somewhat successful, but they haven't necessarily gone as far as perhaps they could have. So I think that puts it at about a satisfactory.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and that wraps us up for this game, I believe, and for this batch of videos. In which case, thanks very much for watching, and we will see you again soon for another video.